Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to a Fresh Stories book chat. We are here today with Jocelyn. Jocelyn, can you introduce yourself?
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me. Yes, my name's Jocelyn Jane Cox, and I'm the author of a memoir called Motion Dazzle.
Well, I am a big memoir fan, so tell us what Motion Dazzle is about. I love that title, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the subtitle is a memoir of motherhood, loss, and skating on thin ice. So the narrative is about me losing my mother to dementia and other physical ailments while I was becoming a mother myself. And I had been a competitive figure skater. That's where the ice part comes in. And so that sport and my 20 years of coaching that sport sort of serve as the backdrop to the story. The book follows the day of my son's first birthday party, which was zebra themed. So my cover has zebra
Uh-huh.
stripes across the front. And it turns out that the term motion dazzle is a term that refers to the survival mechanism of zebras. So all of their stripes actually confuse their predators. So a lion, for example, doesn't know which zebra to pounce on. So their stripes sort of save them. And one of the things I'm looking at in the book is, you know, while I was hosting this party, my mother was in the hospital and really not
Mhm.
doing well. So I'm kind of looking at this concept of the ways that we sort of distract ourselves, maybe distract others, maybe use performance in sort of, I'm going to say, more positive way to get through things. We're all trying to get through difficult things all the time
Yeah.
as parents, as women, as caregivers. So that term sort of pulled it all together, the figure skating and the attempt to sort of cope through life's challenges and difficulties.
I didn't know that term, and I'm fascinated by it. And I love that you used it in all of these different ways to create these metaphors in the book.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
have you always loved writing?
Yes, I have since I was a little kid. I received erasable pens when I was 7 years old, and the rest is history. For
Yes.
some reason, the erasable pen and the fact that I could revise, and I do love revising to this day, was kind of miraculous to me. So it was this momentous invention. I have been writing ever since. I started off writing more fiction and have gravitated toward nonfiction more recently in my life.
So, what is it like going from fiction to writing a memoir? And I'm always fascinated by memoirists, like what your process was like.
Yeah, I think there are so many similarities. You still have scenes, you still have dialogue, you still have characters, you still have
Right.
setting, you still have point of view. So there are so many similarities. I think the difference is that you are really trying to arrive at truth in a different way. I think that novelists and fiction writers are also trying to arrive at a truth, but obviously, it's different with memoir writing that we are really excavating the past and trying to stick to the facts as much as possible. Of course, everyone's experience, is different. And, everyone involved in a scenario could tell a different story about it. But I think the memoirist's goal and job is to tell the truth as they know it and their personal truth in their heart and in their brains. And that was really fun for me. There was no hiding behind a whole other storyline. There was no hiding behind a character. That being said, by setting up my book to follow one day, which was this zebra themed first birthday party, I think I was using a bit of a short story construct. For me, it was easy to say, oh, I'm just going to write the story of a day. And then I'm going to go back in time and provide the context. And then
Right.
the two storylines, the past and the present, sort of co-join toward the end of the book. And then I move forward from there. So I think it was a comfort zone for me to take a sort of a quote unquote smaller scope, tell the story of a day. To me, that was drawing on my own fiction experience, having written a lot of short stories.
Yeah, it reminds me almost like it's a cinematic look at it, right? It's very much like a movie, when you explain it in that way.
Yeah.
When you write, so this is a memoir that goes from present time to past. So
Yeah,
did you write it like that, or did you how did you kind of excavate that writing process?
I did. I always knew I wanted to tell the story of a day, and I always knew I'd be going back into the past. It took me a little while to figure out what order to present those moments from the past. And I was writing them completely randomly. Just the moments and the scenes that were just coming up for me while I was writing. So I didn't have any kind of structure to that backstory. And I thought at first that it would be full random play and completely out of order. As I revised many, many, many times, I decided to make that backstory a little more chronological, not completely chronological, but I did make it a little bit more in order. And I really love where it landed in that way so that, you're jumping in time, but you know that the backstory is somewhat, linear.
And the topic is really pertinent for right now, right? Because everybody's talking about kind of being part of that sandwich generation and raising kids while you're raising parents in a way. Do you find that when you talk about this book, a lot of people are relating to that?
Yes. Um, in my friend set, I was the first person to go through, for the most part,
Mhm.
an intense period of caregiving. And I'm now seeing a lot of my friends in my age group doing that juggle of caring for two generations at one time. And let's admit that caring for one generation is its own challenge, right?
Mhm.
And I have to say, there's a lot of similarity between those two different types of caregiving. These can be two
Yeah.
people who are fully relying on you. These can be two people that don't have independence and are fully, dependent on someone else.
Yep.
The difference, of course, is that when we're bringing up our children, you're so full of hope and you're so excited by their developmental changes, which are in the positive, right? And unfortunately, when you're caring for an aging person, especially someone dealing with memory loss, the trajectory is down. So I was kind of caring for two people who needed me both. They both needed me equally, and they were on very different trajectories.
Yeah, it's a lot, and I think it's really important to represent that in the books that we write, right? So that, people can come across this and not feel so alone, which I always feel like is the whole part of writing a memoir. So who was this, book ideal for, Jocelyn?
Yeah, it really is for people, mostly women, who are dealing with this squeeze. New motherhood or, you know, motherhood of, mothering children of
Yeah,
elementary school, middle school, maybe high school, and starting to see that the role is shifting in relationship to their parents, where our parents for so long are, for the most part, depending on your relationship, are providing support to us, there's a moment or maybe several moments where there's a shift. So the response that I'm getting from readers is that a lot of them have either gone through that shift or they're in the moment, they're right in
yep,
it right now. And, the DMs and the texts and the emails have just been overwhelmingly like, wow, I'm also going through this. And I'm attempted to really show the difficulty of it and, some of the beauty of it as well,
yeah,
and the necessity to forgive ourselves along the way, that we are not going to parent perfectly and we are not going to give care to an elder perfectly either.
mhm,
We're all going to be winging it to a certain degree. There are no perfect right answers, and we're going to have to figure it out as we go. And I think
yeah,
that's what I've tried to depict of my situation, that I made some mistakes, but I also did the best I could.
absolutely. Yeah, what did you learn about yourself in writing this book?
It was fascinating. I think I learned to forgive myself
Mm,
for those mistakes. I also ended up feeling better about my skating career than I did. I went pretty far in skating, but not as far as I wanted. And I had to really look at the success that I did have and the strength I did develop from that participation in sports in a very intense way. And I think there was just a lot of self-forgiveness. Again, I did my best. The best I could as a skater. I did the best I could as a mother, and I did the best I could as a
mhm.
caregiver. So it was kind of, to let go of some regret.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. If somebody is thinking about writing a memoir, what would be some words of wisdom that you could leave them with?
Yeah, I think that one of the best things you can do when you get started is to make lists.
Mm,
Make lists of characters, the people you think would be involved. Make lists of scenes and moments that you remember the most. A lot of people are afraid that they're not going to remember enough.
yeah.
And I think once you get in there, you end up remembering a lot more than you would think through the help of emails and photos, etc. But just making lists, I think, I had a running list of the scenes in the book. And like I said, I wrote them kind of randomly and had to sort of work to reorder them. But was kind of a low lift way and low pressure way to start compiling those pages, those paragraphs, those sentences, so that all of a sudden it did start looking kind of like a manuscript.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so excited to read this. I'm obsessed with the name. I truly think it's wonderful. Where can people find the memoir, Jocelyn?
Yeah, the best place to go is my website, jocelynjanecox.com.
Cool.
And I have several different places where you can purchase it, Bookshop, Amazon,
Awesome.
etc.
Cool. We'll put all the links in the show notes. We appreciate you. And I think this is going to be a very important memoir for a lot of people, who are coming up to these issues right now. So I appreciate you sharing your story and making people feel less alone.
Thank you so much, Olivia.